Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining today. Ryan, Michael, it's great to see you guys. I am Caroline. I am with Metron. We do all things water. So we do water submetering, city meter monitoring. We work with multifamily, mobile home park, commercial, and utility clients. And I'm excited to be here. I specifically sell to our mobile home park multifamily and commercial clients. So I have a great deal of expertise in all things, submetering, in-unit leaks, freezing. So any questions are welcome. I know today Ryan and I are going to share how he specifically uses the system and as it relates to Rent Manager as well, which is one of our integration partners.
Thank you, Caroline. Ryan, want to introduce yourself real quick and talk about your experience so far with Metron, as well as how long you've been working with them, and just give a little bit of background on yourself.
Mike, I need that hat more than you. Next time I see you, I'm gonna take that because, like, if you look at my hair, it's awful. And for those who haven't met this gentleman, his hair is pretty much perfect.
It's not true. It's starting to fall out because of all the work we do with the MHP pros.
Relative to this landing strip here, it's great. Carolyn, thanks for joining. Obviously, Dan's with us as well. I'm pumped. I mean, we've had Metron for years now. So I am, as of this recording, on my 88th property. It's about 4,700 total doors. I'm closing on my 89th, hopefully next week. So Carolyn, got to get with you and order the next batch because we need some Metron. And how long have we been working together? Gosh, it has been, yeah, I must have met Chris at a Seco or MHI years ago, and I will never forget because I met him and then I didn't see him again for like a year or two. And I just remember being like, there's that guy who's like really overly passionate. And in retrospect, that was definitely Chris. But I love the guy to death. He's fantastic and has been a wonderful partner and has really helped push things through for me. And I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it quickly again. Back in the day when I had no money and no network and no experience, and I was trying to grow a business from the ground up, I literally had to read meters on my own. And I remember in Spartanburg, South Carolina, we had it's a 65 lot mobile home park, and I remember having in the middle of a downpour, having to go and read 60 plus just old school meters, handwrite every single one of them with an umbrella like this and a hand pump to pump the water out of these meters to write everything down. And then you make a mistake here or there and you can't read your writing and you got to go run back out into the rain and then manually enter. And it just took forever and there were mistakes. And as we're going to go over today, there's just stuff that is instantaneous and unbelievably helpful to you, your business, and hopefully most importantly your residents. Because what we experienced many, many, many times over the years before we got to we as an organization do what I'm about to demonstrate here. Like even with Metron, we would go 30 days without pinging someone and letting them know how much water they've racked up. And people would rack up $500+ water bills who were living paycheck to paycheck. And then be like, oh, it's your fault. It's your meter not working. And it was like, all right, like, is your toilet working? Oh, dude, that doesn't matter. And then you're like, okay, it is my toilet. Oh, it was a leak. Oh, it was on me. Can I still not pay you anyways? Right? Like that happens to this day. And then there's countless other examples we'll get into as well. So, look, the one thing that I really hope that I can help sing to off the mountaintops about Metron is that, like anything else, it isn't just going to do everything for you. You've got to put effort into it. And most complaints that I've heard and read online all come down to this. If you're not using the product, it ain't just going to work. Great example. I made the mistake of buying my 6-year-old a drone. And guess what? Turns out they run on batteries. Turns out batteries run out at some point. as does the proverbial 6-year-old. And when 6-year-old batteries run out, they melt down. And when, drones run out of batteries, they don't work. And it turns out if the drone doesn't work, also the child doesn't work. So it's as it turns out, you can't buy a drone and just assume it's just going to work. You got to know to put the batteries in it, so to speak, right? And so Metron has a few things that you just got to understand about it. And by the way, every single water meter that I am aware of has the same issues. To me, Metron has been an unbelievable lifesaver and moneymaker and helper. And I'm like pumped because Carol and I have been talking about this for months now, um, to show off how to properly use Metron, or at least give an example of different ways you can properly use and track and make sure your Metron's working just fine. Because otherwise, that it just, you plug it and you expect it to work, and then you get
Yep.
frustrated when it doesn't work. You just got to know where to kind of spend your time. Mike, was that pretty good?
That was absolutely incredible. So, where do we kick off, guys? You want to share your screen, Ryan, and start talking about it, or do you want to start on the Metron side and maybe get an overview of the software first?
Carolyn, up to you. I mean, I got everything ready to show off, but if there is a place y'all wanted to start, whatever works for you.
Let's have you share your screen and I'll jump in with anything I see or anything that I really want to highlight, and then I can always share. I have your account pulled up too on my side, so we can jump back and forth.
What I'd like to do here is because I have a lot of this stuff redacted, what I'd like to do is share my screen first just for the protection of my residents. What I'd like to do is share some stuff here, and if you, Dan, anyone has some more technical stuff you can get into, then we'll switch sharing my screen to letting y'all really dig into the weeds. But I think that'd be a good 1-2 punch. What do you think?
Great. Love it.
Awesome. Let me get sharing. So the first thing I want to show here, this tells a coherent story, I promise. It's going to kind of start in a weird spot, and let me explain why. What you see right here is an actual email I received this morning at 4 a.m. at 10:22 a.m. When I screenshotted this. And what this is a daily email I get. I've got, as I mentioned, literally thousands of doors. And it's just when you're at that level of scale, you need something that can be automated and helpful to go through and clean various things up, help you clean various things up. So I have a team within my organization. Now, to be fair, I've got 30 employees, so it's a little bit easier to manage when you have less units. But when you're at my scale, we need a team to go through and do a whole bunch of stuff. So I have a Metron team, and I'll explain that in a minute. But basically, all four of us on our Metron committee, if you will get this email plus or minus 10 a.m. And what it will have, if you can see my screen all right, is, in so many words, whatever the heck it is that you want. Uh, I have mine set up to send this auto email to include anybody who is blasted through 500 gallons in a 24-hour period of time. In my experience, residents use on average about 4,500 gallons a month. Divide that out, 500 gallons a day by 30 days is like 15,000 gallons. So, like, you're probably not burning through 15,000 gallons of water in a month when the average family, mind you, is using like 5,000 in an entire month, right? So in other words, like that's a pretty comfortable threshold for us. And so we'll get this list here, and there's a bunch of things we do quite literally every day. So the first thing we do is go to the highest priority, which is, all right, who's got a leak? And the beautiful thing is it'll give you your endpoint ID, your customer, the lot number, and the number of gallons, right? And so like anybody that burned through like 1,200 gallons, like they need a phone call. Like we need a phone. Here, I'm going to go for it a little bit. We need a phone call or a text. So here's Rent Manager. Speaking of Rent Manager integration, basically what I do with my Metron team is I first and foremost we send these text messages to anybody who was flagged for a leak. Now, the cool thing about Metron is this email will go out to each regional manager that I have right here, and it'll list everybody in their region that was on this original list over here. And not only will it include that, but sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. This is an example of a 24-hour usage printout on Metron. And what I can gather from something like this is like, this person clearly has some type of intermittent leak because you've got peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, right? It's not like and flat plateau. And as a result, what we can do here is go, small ongoing overnight leak, peaks during the day. Boom, print this little guy out right here. Text it we use Grasshopper and Rent Manager text. So then this way they're getting it from two places. They're getting a generalized email right here. So, as you can see, I've got, 20 or 30 people with a potential leak. It's great to, within Rent Manager, be able to go through and pick those 20 people and have Rent Manager say name, number, dot, 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 dot here, and blast that out quickly. And then we can go back out and text the actual picture so people will know, like whether it's an intermittent leak or like a gushing leak. And as you can see here, we've done it in Spanish and English. So this is our auto text for a really flowing leak. And then this is it in English for an intermittent leak. So we do English and Spanish. And so what we're able to do here is get out in front of it. So in other words, you get this big old list here. You figure out who's, what's going on where, and you let the people know because unfortunately, in my experience, the adoption rate for people logging in as a customer and having the customer facing Metron, I mean, my adoption rate, Carolyn, you could probably pull it up. It's like 2 people, and I don't even think they've logged in. So for us to do this for them, not charge them for this service, mind you, this is all included in your lot rent. Um, I have saved, I cannot tell you how many people's water bills I have saved from going into quite literally the 500 plus territory and keep it down to $100 or less. And another thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and then I wanted Carolyn, Dan, whomever to hop in, is there's a reason why I have a team, and it's not just so like, if one person takes a day off, or cross training. A big reason is people get really, really, really upset when they get this text for the first time ever. They either outright ignore you, so in other words, you need to call them a couple times. They blame you. Well, it's your meter, it's not me. Or they're just rude. And so like they're rude at first, and then they figure out it is their fault, and then they fix it, and then they don't thank you, and that's just we work in a thankless industry, and you know what? I don't need a thank you, okay? Like I don't. I need people to have a good, clean, safe community to live in, and that's my focus. Not getting compliments from folks. Compliments are nice, not necessary. Anyways, what I now include on here is my delinquency team. So in other words, I've got people who call and mail and email and text and et cetera, to collect lot rent and rent that hasn't been paid. And so when I include someone whose job is literally to have their face ripped off by people, what you mean I owe you more money? Like, how dare you? You can't, da, 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 da. People who are just incredibly rude. Like, that's the perfect person to put on this. Because if the regional manager calls up, which is, I have my regional managers be responsible for this. So my Metron team will do all the texting, but then it's on the regional manager to follow up. If they're rude or not answering, then this gets funneled over to my delinquency team. And what that does is now I have a whole team who are just bombarding folks with like, look, like, let's not have a $500 water bill. Oh my God, it's unbelievably easy to change a toilet flap, right? And it's like some folks just need a little bit of convincing that like the sound from their toilet could result in a $500 water bill. And although Metron, I know you guys and gals have seen that a million times over the years, as we've seen it a million times over the years, folks who aren't in multi like us don't know that, and they need a bit of convincing. So again, this is one piece that we're going to go into today. But to me, the highest priority and one of the biggest benefits of Metron is to be able to help people save money. And unfortunately, it I haven't maybe I don't know, Mike, maybe you have an AI out there who can go and like help talk a really angry person who off the ceiling and convince them to check their toilet. But I don't think the AI is quite there yet, so you need a bit of a human touch to make that kind of sales pitch, if you will. But I want to take a pause here before we hop into what I would consider priority number two on a daily basis. Carolyn, anyone, any of y'all want to hop in do you want me to stop sharing my screen if you want to show something?
Yeah, I think I'll highlight as we talk about leaks. So Metron, we've been around for 30 years. We started in the utility space, which mean we had to create a platform that was extremely granular and appealed to utility professionals. They live and breathe water all day, every day. Now, about 8 years ago, we came into the mobile home community space, and we still had that same technology. So the benefit for everybody in this space is you get such granular data, and that is able to catch leaks and tell us exactly what that leak is. So the running toilets, like Ryan was talking about, what we see sometimes is a water heater and it ticks up and down. But you can't generally get that with simple daily reads, say a manual read meter or an hourly even. It's important to know exactly what you're looking at, and what's more important is being notified so you're not having to sit in the system and interpret it. We have notifications for high use, like Ryan was showing, and all different types of leaks, as well as zero use. So if you think somebody should be home and they're not, we'll notify you that they haven't used water in 24 hours. Freezing. It's another thing. We will notify you when things are getting towards 32 degrees. But I will say with freezing, what's really important to know is our meter is only as good as the heat tape and insulation that is underneath the home or in the pit. It's important, especially if it's a tenant-owned home, that they are maintaining that. Otherwise, any meter, regardless of the type, is going to freeze underneath there.
I think what we'll do, I want to hit a couple priorities, and then I would love you to show off some of the behind the scenes water scope stuff. So let me hop back over here.
Great.
So, because one specific thing I'd love for you to show off is a little bit more of the granular details you can get
Yeah,
like this.
absolutely.
But another big thing that this will pump out, or you can have pump out for you, are meters that are pushing through zero reads, as in like it just didn't ping the data for that day, or it's like quite literally a zero read. So like it successfully alerted, it gave you an update, but there was zero usage day over day. Um, Most of the time, that's like someone went out of town. Not a big deal. Some of the time, that indicates an issue with the meter. And in my experience, over half of the issues with the meters are quite literally just some knucklehead bumped into the antenna, and you just go and you get another antenna and you put it on, and you're off to the races. Sometimes there's a warranty issue. Sometimes, like I mentioned in Spartanburg, it rains a lot and there's water in the little meter box, if you will, and it just has trouble pinging the system. So, and like literally anything you've ever bought ever, there is a percentage fail rate. And when you have literally thousands of Metron meters, as do I, like the percentage rate in my experience is very small, but it's a non-zero amount. And so it's going to break at some point in time. You're going to have to deal with it. And even if it doesn't break, dirt and little things can oftentimes get stuck in it. And occasionally you got to just pop it open and clean it. What I love about the Metron meters, they're incredibly easy. Like a maintenance guy can install it, which is great. And a maintenance guy can pop in and, clean it and put on a new antenna. But what's great about these emails is you can have it set up so it also tells you if there's trouble with a read or if there's been like 2 straight weeks of a zero read, right? So like sometimes people leave for 2 weeks, but like let's be honest, most of us don't leave the house for, more than a few days, right? So it's good to send the maintenance crew around. You can give them a list, have them go once a week, once every other week, once a month, and check on those meters just to make sure everything is working a-okay. And so a big part of what my Metron team does, so obviously priority number one, fix known leaks, right? Daily assault it, get the regional manager, get the delinquency team, et cetera, hit it hard and fast. But priority number two is let's make sure all the zero reads or zero pushes actually there's nothing wrong with it. So what I'll do is if my regional manager or property manager can't get to it, you give your maintenance guy or whomever you have on site to go and just like quite literally just take a picture of it. That easy. You can diagnose like most Metron issues when they happen with a quick picture. And so I would say priority number two here, and again, you can automate it in emails like this, is to go through and like, let's just double check here that there are no push through issues. And then the third thing I wanted to show, Carolyn, and then I think we'll hop over to y'all and let you get into some more granular stuff,
Yeah.
is all of this ultimately leads up into NOI. And NOI, when with regards to water, is the utility recapture rates. So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to bill back so that way we can bring our water bill down. You work with governments like the North Carolina Utilities Commission, great for example. Their whole mantra is please bill back your residents. Why? Because the people who have to pay for the water they use, they typically fix their toilets and don't take as long of showers and don't start a car washing business. But not only that, they also don't send as much water back to the water treatment plant. So it's a public good in their eyes to bill back. But beyond it just being a public good, it also helps your bottom line. So, in other words, there's a return on
Yep.
investment because you have, which you can see on my screen right now, which is called a water recapture rate. So, unfortunately, you're always going to have a leak here, there, or the other place, a leaky elbow, or for some reason, X, Y, or Z wasn't doing X, Y, or Z correctly. And so you have a little bit of a delta between what you're being charged by the municipality and what you're actually billing back residents. For the longest time, I had to calculate this on my own. Metron now will literally do it for you. So what you can see on my screen right here is one of my properties where I have a master meter as well as all the individual meters. And Carolyn and team can show a little bit more of the granular detail that we have there in a minute. But the really super cool thing is like over this kind of 30-ish day period, you can see 130, basically 135K gallons supplied and 117 measured for a water loss rate of 13%. So that's an 87% rate. So in other words, this is doing pretty good because traditionally speaking, the satisfactory threshold for water recapture is like 80. And so I wanted to show everybody this. If you're not pummeling your team with metrics and data and a scoreboard, you need to be because people want to be measured. People want to be able to celebrate their wins and show off their numbers, and you want to be able to hold people accountable when they don't. And, as they say, what gets measured gets managed. And here are two things that are directly affect your NOI. On the left is water recapture rate, and on the right is expense ratio. And these are two of several KPIs that I pummel my employees with. So then that they know how they're doing, what they need to do to, make fixes and on and on and on. As you can see here, my more stabilized stuff, we're at about an 85% recapture rate. And some of my newer stuff, like this is a newer portfolio. We had to install Metron and fight through issues and recapture and yada, yada, yada. And then some markets, just this market right here has incredibly old infrastructure and is incredibly leaky. But we've marched this up massively from sub 50%. Then this market right here, if you can believe it, we were at a low point of 13% water recapture rate. And over the course of about 6 months, we slowly but surely, with Metron, found and eliminated almost every single leak. And we fought this property up, or this region rather, up 60% in recapture rates. And this is all because I'm tracking recapture rates and we're, attacking um, daily, making sure all of these people are alerted to their leaks, making sure anything with a zero read isn't a problem with the meter itself, or making sure people are actually out of town, or people aren't bypassing the meter. I've had that happen several times. That's a doozy. So those are kind of the big three priorities that my team and I use. And just Carolyn, before I hand the football off to you, I just want to mention one more thing. Um, we have a property that was getting audited, and I guess technically still is. The wastewater plant was, in the Department of Health's opinion, getting too many gallons of water. And so, in other words, the wastewater plant was rated for 5,000 gallons a day, and what I was able to show with Metron, because they're getting all fussy about it, as they should, because we want to keep people safe, and that's their job. What we were able to show with Metron, we put a master meter out front, and we went and we tracked months and months and months worth of data, and we found that we're consistently in the 4,000 gallons a day. So, in other words, if that wastewater plant was indeed getting over 5,000 gallons a day, it wasn't from our well. So now that we've checked that box off, what's next? Well, now you go and scope the lines and figure out if there's root intrusion, and figure out if, in so many words, um, rainwater is getting into the lines. Turns out it wasn't. But the good news is we went and fixed the lines anyways. And we got this wonderful HD footage of disgusting sewer lines. That's a story for another day. But that is a hell of a lot better of a story to tell the Department of Health, who are going to come in and they're looking to bully and make an advantage, make an example out of someone, to show them, hey, look, I have a meter right there that is giving you exact to the minute flows for months of what's going out of this well. Oh, and by the way, here's HD footage of our entire sewer lines showing you that we don't have root intrusion. What's next, sir, ma'am? And the answer was nothing, but we want to put you under a consent order anyways. It's like, you know what? That's fine. But guess how fast I was able to do all of that? And Carolyn and team will show you in a second. But it's quite literally, you go in a matter of a couple minutes, you export all of that. So
Yep.
obviously you got to get it all set up first, but that's just one example of where I've, my partnership, my personal partnership with Metron ended up making a potential disaster of a situation into, like, quite literally a couple of clicks and hiring an excellent plumbing team to go in and take a video, right? Because if I don't have that video, if I don't have actual data that I can shove in someone's face, or even if I have that data, it just takes weeks to go and get it versus, like, quite literally minutes. What I am now able to do is defend myself, because anyone here who's ever had to deal with a government agency, you're not dealing with lawyers and super, intellectual individuals. Not saying they're stupid, just saying, like, they're not going to go and, like, really understand the law and really take time to No, a lot of these folks literally want to be government officials so they can bully you. Like, that's part of that's like a benefit. Like, I get my pension and this is the salary I get. Plus I get to legally bully someone with qualified immunity, right? And, like, you got to be able to defend yourself. And so one of the unsung, in my opinion, one of the major unsung um, benefits of Metron is just the ability to have all of that data at your fingertips to protect yourself and your residents. So That's everything I wanted to cover today. Thank you for letting me just like get it all out. Carolyn, where do we want to start? Let's have you show off WaterScope and get into a little bit more details.
Yeah, I want to first touch on what you were saying about being able to protect yourself. And I see this every day. I just had a client reach out today and say he needs the last few years worth of data use on a single pad, and I'm able to get that for him. We store all of that usage, and so I'm able to go back to 2021 and see what it looked like back then in 2022. Same thing on the infrastructure side. You were showing the master meter and your infrastructure loss. We have all of that and we'll store it for months. But what's important about that, not only can you just see it, you can go get sewer credits in some case. So if you're really leaking pretty heavily, you can go back and say, hey, clearly this didn't go down the drain. What can you do? Some cities will help you, others won't. So it just depends and always ask. And I'll go ahead and share my screen a little bit more here. Let's make sure this is good. All right. So what you're looking at is exactly what I'm talking about, right? This is the infrastructure. So the blue, that's what all the submeters and all the homes use. And the green is what went through the city meter, or if it's on a well, what was supplied by the well. And the difference, in this case, 49.51%, that's what's not making it to the homes. And that's what you're losing every month, regardless of your bill back. So I think, in addition to submeters, always track your infrastructure. You can do it through us, or you can do it manually like Ryan used to do. But it's always important to make sure this is up to date because as you can see in the last day, something has spiked. This isn't, in the last month, it's you are able to know immediately. Going back here, you can always see that on the tenant side as well. So if we go in, and what you're seeing over here, if I just go ahead and zoom in really quick, what you're seeing here, these are all those notifications that Ryan then gets emails for, right? The high use, the leaks, the anything he wants automated, we'll put the conditions here and then he gets that email. So I'll go ahead and show you what a leak looks like here. So what you're seeing, anything that is green is going to be indoor use. You can always hover over it and see what it's predicting that it is. So at this, you don't have to get this nosy. Most people don't, but it will tell you what its best guess of the usage goes to. So in this case, it's a shower. Anything that is in blue is going to be irrigation use. So not only can you track the indoor, the leaks, you can also see what the irrigation looks like. This is especially helpful for my clients who are in California or Florida, and they need to make sure that people aren't irrigating in middle of the day at noon. So they want to check that their residents are doing it at the correct hours. But we track this, and then anything in the red is going to be a leak. So you can hover over and see exactly when a leak starts, if it will let me. There we go. Exactly when a leak starts and how many gallons and for how long. And in this case, what you're seeing is not only does this person have one leak, they have two going at the same time. So it's likely they have a running toilet in addition to a pipe leaking underneath the home, something like that. But what's most important is that the email will be sent out and say, hey, you have this leak. And then you can have the maintenance team go walk the property or go notify the resident, or for Ryan, send him a text through Rent Manager. As Ryan described, he always likes to start with his top priority, and that's what you can do in WaterScope as well. What I just did is amongst all of the meters, how many, or I sorted it by who is the highest user as of today and who is the lowest. So that's going to give me all of my problem children. Where are my leaks? What do I need to pay most attention to? And Ryan was spot on. Anything over 500 gallons in a day is going to be something you want to pay attention to. Another thing that's important to note is it's most common that 5 to 6 pads are going to be using about 50% of the water in your park if it's not being monitored. We typically see, small parks and big parks. The leaks that there's no submeter at a mobile home will go on for months, and it's half your water bill. So it's always important to have some sort of leak detection at each pad site. Now, over here in billing and reports, you can pull all sorts of reports. So you can get all historical use. Again, Ryan talked about, the government and people coming out to bully him. He can pull any sort of report, what of his usage went towards normal use, what went towards leaks, and what went towards irrigation. He can break it down by the day. There's many reports, but what he most likely does is has his Metron account send over all of the data into his rent manager, and he's able to bill in rent manager. So it pulls all of the reads into rent manager, and then from there he can post it onto tenant ledgers, and he doesn't even need to touch a report in here. Right here, you can see for, the portfolio for the property, it will break down all your usage. Again, this is just more tracking where your consumption is going. What's going towards normal use, using the sink, using the shower. What's going towards irrigation? We're getting a little late in the season now. Some of these parks might be in Florida, so it's a different story. But what's going towards irrigation and what's going towards a leak? And these are all ways that you can decrease the consumption and the property water bill, the portfolio water bill, but also just check what's the state of my park. Sometimes when we first installed meters at a park, especially if they're coming from either a manual read system or a no metering system, we'll check this page and 30% of their total usage will be going towards leaks. So that is the quickest fix for you. It's a really quick way to boost your NOI. I'm going through this a little fast, Ryan. So if you feel like I'm missing anything as I'm going through this, please feel free to cut in here.
No, I think this is great. This stuff about WaterScope, I learn every time we hang out. So I love it.
So going back to this page, Ryan, he's offered this to his tenants. It depends on your park. It depends on the specific homeowner if they want to or not. We also offer that the tenant can be signed up for the system and see their individual usage. And what that means is if they're interested in doing that, they'll get text messages and emails for their own meter. So not only are you getting all the emails, so are they. So they're able to have the same level of visibility that you are. This works great, especially for, the squeaky tires, the ones that say, there's no way my water bill is that high. There's no way I'm using that much water. They can log into their meter. They can do a 5-gallon bucket test and pour, 5 gallons and see if it hit at the same time. And it does. And that way they're able to, quiet down, fix the leak themselves. Now, over here, one thing you'll be able to do is you'll be able to separate water scope by property. And why that's important is if you have, say, regional managers or property managers that oversee one park out of 6, and you don't want them to have access to all of your meters, you're able to have them become a group user and they will just focus on their individual park. They'll get notifications for their park and nothing else. So we can do it on the tenant level, a group level, or an admin level. And what that means is you see all meters, all properties in water scope. Going down to your settings, I'll kind of touch on how many things you can get notified on. First, you can set a schedule. Do you want notifications every day or do you just want it on Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Most people like it every day, but it's just an option. One thing we do have is called emergency feature. And what this is the meter will wake up out of sequence immediately if it sees a pretty massive leak. So say a pipe has burst, and 100 gallons have gone through it in an hour. We will wake up the meter and send a text to a phone number and an email, and it likely will get to you quicker than the daily alerts that Ryan was showing. Down here, this is everything we can notify on. High usage, that's Ryan's email. We've got a leak, a threshold, and an intermittent leak. These are 3 different types of leaks that serve different purposes. Intermittent leaks is likely what you'll see the most of. That's going to be your running toilets. I see a running toilet every few hours when I'm looking at WaterScope accounts, if not on every single account. So just pay attention to running toilets, and also pay attention to how much water a running toilet uses. Even if they come back and jiggle the handle, it still has, by that point, has used 150 gallons. You can also notify for backflow. Sometimes this can be useful, not all the time, but sometimes if you're worried about infrastructure leaks, sometimes, the pressure will push water back through the meter and cause backflow. So that is one thing to know. Again, we touched on this, the zero usage, that could be somebody's out of town, or, somebody, we have a clogged meter. If the lines are old, if you have galvanized piping or just really old infrastructure, some things can clog a meter, again, regardless of the meter type. So this will help you know if anything has clogged a meter, and you should go pay attention to that. One thing that we also notify on, which is kind of a niche notification, but is useful, we will notify if any usage goes through a meter and it's not supposed to. Where I see this to be most important is if you have, a backup well or a city meter that has a high usage portion, but you never really see usage go through it. And it might mean that you have a massive leak going on. So we can notify you of really anything your heart desires on this page here. Back here, this is really your home page. And what this is telling you is just at a glance, how much water has gone through every single meter I have in the last week. And you can do it for the last month and track, okay, how much can is this normal for me, or is it different? And what I usually only look at is this gallon amount. I never really take a deep look at this screen here. And down here in settings, and I won't show it just to protect all of the users we have in this account, you can add as many users as you want. You can sign up every single tenant, you can sign up every single property manager, you can sign up every single maintenance person, and every single person who wants to be an admin. We don't limit the amount of users you have in your WaterScope account. Dan, do you feel like I'm missing anything here? Great. Yeah. All right, Dan's going to pull up a case study that is worth mentioning here. Okay.
Okay, well, this is Dan, and I'm slightly off camera. I mean, there I am. We didn't really set up for me to contribute. If you can go to the website, we're just going to show you a case study, and these are public case studies that are on our website, and so I encourage you to have a look at them. And so go to metron-us.com, and then under who we serve, go to the manufactured housing communities, and then scroll down. And if I got my web page, keep going. We have some case studies here. Oh, go up to the top and stop that video playing.
Sorry.
We got the video playing there. So go right down to the case studies. And then there's that top one there, Suncrest, if you click on that. So this is one of our MHP customers. They've got a number of parks in various places. And if you scroll down, you'll see a WaterScope graph there.
Exactly. This is that infrastructure that I started on. So that's when you have the main meter at the, the city meter or at the well system and the comparison to the sub meters there. And go ahead, Dan.
Right. So let me tell you what they did when they had this. This is a pretty old park. I can't remember how many pads are on there. It's probably about 60 to 80 or something pads, and they had huge water loss. And you can see from that graph that the green area above the blue area at the bottom. So the green area, remember, is what's going into the park, and the blue line at the bottom is what they're actually is the sum of all the submeters. And so they knew they had a big problem. They just didn't have any idea where the leak was. So what they did was they told their residents, okay, you guys along this street, we're going to turn off your lateral at 1 p.m. for 10 minutes. And you guys, we're going to turn off your lateral at 1:30 for 10 minutes. And you guys, it'll be 2 p.m. for 10 minutes, and so on. And then they did that. And then next day they could go into WaterScope and see which lateral they had turned off to make the leak disappear. So now they knew exactly which lateral the leak was on. And this was an infrastructure leak between the master meter before it ever got to any of the pads. But now they had homed in on exactly which pipe was the one that had the leak, and they could go look for it. And they fixed it. And you can see right there from the graph the dramatic change overnight. And the savings they had was just enormous. I think, what's it say in the text there? They were
So what was supplied from the city and what the client would be billed on was 476,000 gallons. What was being used by the home was 88,000 gallons. So the difference is pretty insane. And again, you're still paying that water bill there.
totally, yeah. You as a park are paying, and the bill back ratio there, my goodness, what is it, like 15%?
Yeah.
It was absolutely appalling. And so that was just a smart use of WaterScope to go and do your leak tracking by turning off the laterals and seeing which one was the one that was causing the problem.
Yep. And again, when you have this massive leak right here, that's when you can take this data back to this city and at least ask if they do any sort of sewer credits. As long as you have the data to prove it, and WaterScope, again, is so granular that we're able to get it to you in minutes, you can likely get a sewer credit. My clients have good luck with it. Now, infrastructure leaks happen all the time, and especially with how old infrastructure is in most parks, you're going to have leaks. It's just a matter of being notified when they happen, and seeing what your recapture rate is. I know Ryan does a good job of that. It seems like he's got everything under control, and older infrastructure is hard to manage. Just briefly touching on what I was talking about earlier. As far as, where it's November, I'm in Colorado. It hasn't snowed yet, which is weird, but it should. Which brings me to winterizing your park as far as maintaining submeters and heat tape. We're getting into that time where freezing start to happen. So this is the time where you really want to notify your residents that they should make sure their heat tape is plugged in, it's on a line, and it's running. Metron, what we do is we'll notify you if anything hits 32 degrees or below. We can notify you of it, but we can't we can't turn the heat tape on through a meter. So that is up to you to have somebody walk the park and maintain the pipes underneath. What happens in the case of a freezing is it's going to crack the meter body on a Metron meter. I don't know for other meters. And you'll just have to replace the meter body. You won't have to replace the full meter. But it is something to consider now that winter is here somewhat, to make sure everything is winterized on those pipes. Ryan, you don't really have to worry about that. You're in Florida.
Knock on wood.
That is,
No, we
I'm
really
jealous.
don't.
I'm jealous. Well, to be fair, it has been really lovely here in Colorado, but hopefully we'll get some snow soon. We need it. Now, any questions for me on anything that was discussed? Rent manager, I briefly touched on the billing side of that. I know, Ryan, you're doing a demo for rent manager later in the week or next week, so maybe you can highlight more of that. But any questions for me?
I can jump in with some questions here. As you guys were talking, I was brainstorming some. I think one of the most important ones, and we talked about ROI once the meters are installed. Payback periods also, I think, important for individuals to understand as they embark on their submetering CapEx. So, is there a way for an individual who, has a park to determine what their ROI will be and in what time frame? Because, going from a 13% recapture rate to an 85% recapture rate is fantastic. And I'm sure given those statistics, you're going to be, getting that ROI and that payback period, in a year or less. But I wanted to hear from you guys. Then also, if I was wondering if there was a tool of sorts that you guys provide, or whereby people can kind of put this into their existing models, if they're Excel junkies like me, to find out, in what amount of time they'll be able to recoup that investment.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and share my screen on our website, which is metron-us.com. We have, let me get my bearings here. All right. So if we go back to who we serve and go to manufactured housing communities, if you go towards the middle, and I think I went too far, we have a ROI calculator built in here. And you can plug in everything, the number of pads you have total, the park you want to start at. How many city meters or how many well systems? What's the cap rate? What's your average monthly bill back? And so on and so forth. I won't go through the whole thing. It will give you on a per pad level what the ROI is at the per park level and the overall portfolio level here. So this is a great tool that you can use. And yes, I have a spreadsheet. If you'd rather play around with the spreadsheet, I'm happy to send that to you.
Great. And then just jumping back in here to some additional questions. You mentioned wells, and I think a lot of individuals are confused about well and septic and whether or not they can, build back those utilities. That's often a question I get, at least, from
Right.
individuals who are unsure whether or not they can recapture their costs from a well standpoint, since that is private and it is an expense that they are privately taking care of. What is your experience there, Caroline? And then, just an additional add-on question there. You mentioned multiple wells or backup wells, and I guess the question there would be, you'd have a main meter if you had a main water line coming from the town. Would you then submeter kind of multiple wells to see, which wells are producing and maybe which wells are potentially leaking as well? How would that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as far as billing back on well systems, it depends on the park. What I always recommend, and Ryan can jump in, I know you have experience with well systems as well. I always recommend that, they call the municipality that is closest and ask if they can assume the rates if they do want to bill it back. Or I think you, Ryan, do it a different way. It's a 50-50, in my experience, 50-50 chance that they can or cannot. What I will say is always monitor it regardless. So that goes back to the well versus backup well. If you are not willing or cannot bill back on your well system, always put something on the well regardless. That way you're able to at least monitor the leaks. You don't have to, have the CapEx spend of putting it on each home instead, but rather just on the well. And it won't be as granular. You won't get the per pad leak, but that way you can just see how the park is performing as a whole. Ryan, what do you do for your well properties? Are you billing back?
So by and large, I'm not. I would say I went back and had a look because we discussed this on the group mentorship call earlier today. The only state that I bill back in is North Carolina. I have wells in Florida that I have Metron meters on. The majority of my well properties, I don't. I usually don't unless I really have a reason to. Like if the pump keeps going out, or there's an issue with a government inspection. I usually won't do it for various reasons. In North Carolina is the Utilities Commission, and at least based on the ones that I bill back at in North Carolina, they have set rates for you, and then you have quarterly check-ins to just report how much you billed and yada yada yada. The idea is it's different regulations for different, I don't want to say profit, but if you are city water in the state of North Carolina, as of this recording, if you're not making a profit off your water, I don't want to say they don't care, but in my ears, they really don't. And again, their mantra is more like, hey, if we're using less water, we're, it's basically it's a public good, right? So in other words, if you're not making a profit and you can show them that you're not making a profit, right? Because you have the bills and you have what you charged, you're good. For a well, it's a little bit different, right? Because you're technically making a profit, so you have different regulation.
Yep.
And in North Carolina, I believe this is federal. Most utilities fall under a rate lock, if you will, because it's technically a monopoly. So, in other words, there's legislation. You got to be careful. It's annoying to get set up. Sorry, North Carolina Utilities Commission. You're a little bit annoying to get set up. The reporting's a little bit annoying too. But it's by and large a good thing to do. And in terms of like, is it worth it to do it on all of my well properties? As we covered in the group mentorship call today, sometimes it's not for a multitude of reasons. So I don't do it on everything. But what I'll say is like the ones that I have it on, boy, I've caught some leaks. And I know for a fact, I had one in Tampa, Florida, true story. And I think, Carolyn, I told you this. We bought a property that needed to be switched over to city water and city sewer. And in the process of doing that, the well pump went out a bunch of times. And as soon as we turned on Metron, we found three houses that had 500-gallon leaks that were running every day. So we
Yep.
had three families out of however many, 50 plus families, just three. So call it a 6% rate plus or minus of people that had a leak. And eventually, when we got a hold of them, they're like, "We don't care." So you got to figure if like 1% of your residents have a leak at any given time and you have, 1,000 units on well, you have 10 massive leaks going, right? And that might be low, might be more than that, right? So in other words, like is it worth it to Mike, your point earlier, like what's the ROI on that? It may be hard to justify if you're just getting started in the business and you have other more, pertinent things to attack, right? Trees, roads, etc. But it's definitely something that does make a measurable, or at least can make a measurable impact on your NOI, though not necessarily always. But anyways, yeah, we can talk about that for hours. So,
Then I'll just jump in here with one more question because as someone who doesn't have WaterScope set up yet and does not have 86 properties and a team of 30 individuals, I'm sure there's some people who are sitting on this call or are going to watch it later who have the question, uh, this is super complicated. Will I have support? And so I want to give you guys the opportunity here to talk about what the onboarding process looks like quickly. If people have questions, whether it's general submetering questions or specific to their account and to their WaterScope dashboard, you know, this is going to be a hand-holding process, I imagine,
Yes.
especially, with the install, which a lot of people need the help with that, that upfront install. So just give you an opportunity to talk through that a little bit, Caroline.
Yeah. Great question. So, Metron as a company, we've been growing. So, just to give you an idea, we have, I think, about 160 employees now, 170. And that means we have a fully staffed support team and a project management team. And so, when it comes to installs, we have a project management team that will walk you through what an install looks like, what your park is looking like right now. They'll give you install notes after the fact and communicate through the whole process. No park is perfect. sometimes we see the garden hose special, as I like to call it, with lovely and weird looking water lines underneath a home. So they'll just walk you through anything that's going on. Now, as far as after install, me as an account manager, I always like to touch base with my accounts and make sure that they're using the system. That's what's most important about WaterScope. And Ryan, you said it best. It's only as good as you use it. So you might as well use the system and every feature. And I want to make sure you're trained to the level where you're comfortable using it on your own. So we have, your account manager, and you also have a full support team, which reaches out via email. They'll set up a training and they'll do as many as you need. There's no limit to the amount of questions or trainings that you can ask. And all those questions can go through our customer service team or through your account manager. Does that kind of cover what to expect, or anything else you want me to highlight there?
Sorry, I was struggling with my mute button. Absolutely not. That is fantastic. I don't need it. I think that really covered
Great.
everything that I could think of. Ryan, on your side, thank you for showing us
Yes, thank you.
your systems. That was fantastic. Caroline, on your side, and everyone behind the scenes at that beautiful studio, thank you so much for helping us set this up today. Is there anything you guys want to close off on? I will say before, I close, and then I'll hand it off to you, Caroline, to say any closing words, that you can reach out to Caroline and the team directly via link that will pop up on your screen or in your email right after this call. So just click that link and you can reach out to them directly, and they will help you set up an initial consult, I believe, that will walk through your existing parks, how many pads you have, the total costs when you get to that point, etc. And you can go from there. So just keep an eye out for that link, and we should get you set up with Caroline on a call here shortly. Caroline, I'll hand it off to you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer anything when it comes to water. So no unique question is a bad question. I love answering all questions. So feel free to reach out.
Just before
Fantastic.
we close, I'll say that I might be much bigger now. It may, apologies if I made that look complicated. I promise it's not. Just like everything else I've done in this business, I've done it from the ground up. I signed up with Metron, gosh, it must have been 5-ish years ago, and thousands of lots ago, and with a handful of employees, if that at the time. And Chris was my first contact. And if you've ever met him, he is one of the most passionate people I think I've ever met in my entire life. And, I think we had one property with him, and he made me feel like I was absolutely the king of the world. And if there was anything, he would absolutely bend over backwards to make sure I got in front of the right person to get that done. And he's not the only one. Carolyn's helped me out with a couple issues. I'll just emphasize that, like, you'll have a rep and a support team. And by the way, the support team's excellent. My employees don't even need me anymore. They all have their contacts over at Metron now, which is fantastic. So what I'll just say is, like, even before I was the size I was, because I think the temptation there is like, oh, Ryan's singing their praises because, they roll the red carpet out for him because he's got all these. No, this was from day one, before I had, thousands of meters across multiple different accounts with them. And, as far as I can see, they'll do that for you too. And sometimes you got to be the squeaky wheel, because I've heard a couple folks be like, well, I don't get a call back or whatever. Like, I've never experienced that, but I'm also someone, if you don't respond to me fast enough, I'll ping you again. So, Carolyn, Dan, the whole team, you guys are great. That new studio is unbelievable. I'll echo what
Killer.
Mike just said. Um,
I
and
feel like the
yeah,
real deal in here, so I'm excited to use this more.
this is great.
Yeah, whoever you guys hired, we're going to be hiring them too. It might have been Dan,
I
but
think it was Dan. It was a
Dan,
self-service project.
nice. You're going to have to set up the MHP Pros studio soon in Charlotte.
Oh yeah,
It was great talking to you guys, and looking forward to speaking again soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good one.
thanks.